let's talk about the Penric series by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. There are 10 novellas in this and one novel. I've not read the most recent novella, it's not been collected in print yet, nor the novel, which is also recent, Assassins of Thassalon, which is also not in general print. There was a limited print run, but I'm waiting for the Bayen, hopefully the Bayen publication of it. These are sort of retired. So it sounds like a funny way to put it, but this is how Lois McMaster Bujold has put it. They are somewhat retirement projects. By that I mean, I'm not sure I should say projects, but she says they are things she can write conveniently. Now she's retired from having to write to contract. She writes a thing, she publishes it self-published, small print run with an independent printer, and then obviously, Bayen get in touch eventually. You're talking about the second most nominated and the joint most successful winner or something like that, or is it the other way around? I think possibly Heinlein has more wins than her if you count retro Hugos. But yeah, we're talking about a very successful Hugo winner at a time where the Hugos, for a period of time, for about 15 to 20 years, encompassed a fairly broad spectrum of speculative fiction, rather than the bleeding edge. She's one of my favourite authors, and I highly recommend. I have recommended both World of Five Gods, which these are part of, and the Vorkosgan saga, which I did do some extra reviews on that recently to catch up on where I've been reading. The three collections out so far from Bayen are Penric's Progress, 3 novellas, Penric's Travels, 3 novellas, and Penric's Labours, 3 novellas. Upsettingly, I think I've only just realised this, Penric's Labours has a gloss cover. You can actually see it there, the difference there. I don't know why they've done that. Bayen, sort it out. I don't want to have to burn all the dust covers. They've got... so some nice covers. These ones are okay. I don't know if they're all by the same person. I kind of think this one's not very good. Okay, yeah. Yes. They are novellas about a young chap called Penric who lives in the cantons in fantasy Switzerland, and who he meets a temple sorcerer from the Temple of the Five Gods, and she dies. And a temple sorcerer has something called a demon, which is not a demon in our terms, but rather a unformed or initially unformed emanation of chaos from the realm of the fifth god, the bastard. Demons can be very destructive, but they can be shaped because they're just potential. If you want to go in your Aristotelian Thomist terms, they are pure potential to begin with, and they are formed by act occurring upon them. And in this case, you've got a very powerful old demon who's had 12 previous hosts, 2 animals, 10 humans. That's incredibly old and formed, and those 10 include several temple sorcerers, very many. But the big gimmick is they're all of them, including the 2 animals, were all women, and Penric is a guy. And this sets up a couple of interesting dynamics. One, it sets up the internal dialogue between the spirit in his head or whatever and him, is that between a sort of maternal figure, but maybe sometimes some other dynamics, and initially a young guy who is making his way in the world. I generically speaking recommend these, I think, and I'll go into a bit more detail about the 9 novellas I've read. I can't comment on the other stuff, but just reviewing these. Basically, Bujold is a very good writer. She's very good at writing culture. She's very good at creating organic character stakes. She's, generally speaking, a limpid, fluid, effective writer, quite efficient, doesn't spend enormous amounts of time doing stuff. She gets the job done. She effectively communicates the action. She's a good writer of things like action and stuff, but she's not chiefly really an action writer. She is an ideas writer, speculative. It is an interesting thing that you could see her as, she's one of those sci-fi fantasy writers who's mostly about culture. She's very good at developing cultures. She's mostly about character. She's very good at characters, but she does do ideas well. I've talked about that with the Vorkosgan saga. She's very good at setting up sci-fi ideas with really organic character stakes. And it's the same in her fantasy. I think I've reviewed I'm not sure if I've done both Curse of Chalion and Paladin of Souls, but I have done at least one of them, and I've done a general video for the series, World of Five Gods. But with those two particularly, Paladin of Souls won the Hugo. They are both very good examples of this sort of like, here's an idea, a widow goes to a castle, there's something weird going on with the lord of the castle, who she's, maybe there's a kind of love angle there, but there's something really weird and supernatural, so you kind of got a gothic element there, but actually the magic of the world set up with rules that aren't super hard rules, but they are rules, are part of the mystery and discovering what's really happening. You know, that sort of thing, where you've got a interesting world building idea, you've got a character, you've got a situation, that all fit together well. And it's the same here. Penric, you get to see him develop over 9 stories, where he's gradually becoming more and more senior, where he's dealing, particularly by the time you get to Penric's Labours, or the back end of Penric's Progress as well, you're dealing with stuff that's been flowing through the whole thing, you know, old problems, old situations, characters who have been developed over that time as well. And this is more true from, I'm thinking particularly in Penric's Progress, where, and it comes up a tiny bit in Labours, where you, Penric's Progress, Penric's Travels, but where you start to get these other characters from mock Byzantium, Sidonia, who come into his life and stick around and become important in a number of stories. So yeah, I think it's novellas are also a good serial format. They're 100 pages each, these, generally speaking, and so you get a short bite, and you get her use her efficient and effective plotting and prose to quickly resolve, like in terms of quickly within 100 pages, resolve some good ideas and an interesting plot. Thoroughly enjoyable, and you're not, just for the amount of time you're investing, you're unlikely to regret that. You know, you're not going to be like, man, I spent a couple of hours reading that was dreadful. It's not dreadful, but if you didn't like it, you're not going to feel that upset. You know, you can buy I imagine you can still buy the ebooks individually for them, so feel free to just buy Penric's Demon, the first one, and give it a go. Let's have a think. Oh yeah, by the way, yes, as I suspected, the covers of the first 2, which are decent, are by a different person to the third one, which is not very good. The names, I guess, I'm not sure about. Penric's Travels, what would Travels be for? Penric's Labours, I assume, is Hercules' Labours, and Penric's Progress is obviously Pilgrim's Progress. So, the first 3, Penric's Demon, Penric and the Shaman, and Penric's Fox, are set in fantasy Switzerland, in the cantons. Penric is like a minor nobleman, I think from the cantons rather than from the Weald, which is fantasy Germany. But either way, he's sort of German, Swiss or something. And what you get here is first story is he receives that, and the second and third have to do with. It's interesting that very quickly Bujold decides to leap to bringing in another magic system she established in the 3rd novel in World of the Five Gods, the Hallowed Hunt, which is good if not great. Shamanism, which is to do with a big thing, a big idea in the World of Five Gods, is the idea that spirit imprints are a thing. So demons are a sort of spirit imprint, albeit an literally extraterrestrial imprint. You've got like the idea that ghosts can be, so if a spirit is sundered, a ghost can be attached to a place, or it can go up to a god upon its death. That's a material and real thing. And similarly, there is a way that animal spirits can be essentially layered into something to create power. And I think she immediately kind of brings in this contrast of like, he's got this very old wise demon, one extraterrestrial thing, he's learning his powers, and now he has to kind of deal with this very alien situation with different magic involved. I think Penric's Progress, the 3 novels in it, the 3 novellas, are all very good. I think Penric's Demon was possibly the last Hugo nomination she had. It's that, I say it's 2015, maybe she's had one since, I don't know if, I'm not sure if any Vorkosgan has been nominated since then, but yeah, I don't think so. So I think pretty much the last Hugo nomination she had was for a novella, and they are, yeah, these three are very good. And I raced through these when I read them. The second book, Penric's Travels, has him go beyond the cantons. You've got Penric's mission, where he is sent to Sidonia to secure the services of the Sidonian general Arisadia for the Duke of Adria. And then you have Mira's Last Dance and The Prisoner of Limnos. So you have two that are kind of mock Byzantium based, and one which is sort of going up the coast from mock Byzantium. So you have all this stuff in the, because this is a fantasy Europe, in what for us is the Balkans and Greece. And so, yeah, whereas these three, fantasy Switzerland. And these, I enjoyed the characters in these. Arisadia and Nikis are good additions to the cast. I very much enjoyed them. I think Mira's Last Dance is a really interesting one that I didn't thoroughly enjoy, but I think had a really interesting idea in it, which is that essentially it's a sort of, I had some comparison in my head, it was a really good one. Basically, he's got these 10 human minds that are imprinted onto the demon, and so he is able to essentially use those. And maybe you can get a good comparison in the comments, but essentially that he relies on Mira to get them through the situation. I thought it was literally meant to be, I think, a fairly absurd and burlesque plot at points. I think I just found it less impactful and a bit more like, not sure if I'm enjoying this. And then Penric's Labours, which I finished fairly recently. This is an interesting one. So Masquerade and Lodi is the 9th one she wrote, and it screwed up her, as she says, it's the first one to screw up her timeline. Masquerade and Lodi, the Orphans of Raspe and the Physicians of Vilnock are in the upper Balkans and fantasy Italy, basically. So they're kind of somewhat connected in, and that they connect to his particular job he has that links them all to some loose degree. Masquerade in Lodi the plot is fun. There was a thing where I felt like her style had slipped a bit. That it wasn't quite as neat and tidy. There are habits where basically she is very good at combining a casual tone with very lean and toned prose. And I felt like we went very casual in Masquerade and Lodi. Orphans of Raspe, which was actually the 7th written, there are similar problems I felt, and it kind of it's quite fun. I think it's quite fun. I think it has quite an interesting plot to do with, essentially, Pen is captured in a situation, and he and Desdemona have to, because Des being the name he gives to the demon, he has to work out how to get out of it. And essentially it's just really hard, like all these plans he's coming up with, things are going wrong. There's a really interesting plot dynamic to it, but it felt like it had the same casual thing. Weirdly, getting to the last of the ones I've read, the 8th written, 9th chronologically, Physicians of Vilnock, probably the best of all of them. The prose issues, the style was tight, and the plot is exceptional, and it's just really well executed. It's not, none of these are as good, and they don't need to be as good. They're novellas, they have a different purpose, I think, generally speaking, not always, but they're not as good as Paladin of Souls. They're not as good as Mirror Dance, but in the Vorkosgan saga. But then, and the same with the Vorkosgan novellas, they're not as good as the novels, but that's okay. I think they provide a different thing, which is to give you something kind of a wafer thin mint at the end of the meal, or something to tide you over between novels by her. So yeah, I think they are good. I don't know if we're looking at a stylistic decline in the latter half. I'd have to wait till. I really am looking forward to being able to get Assassins of Thassalon as a hard copy, but assuming that, if it is one, I still enjoyed those two that I have just offered criticism of, and I can enjoy a lot along those lines. The most recent Vorkosgan novel from 2018, I think, had, amongst other things, similar criticisms, so there may be a stylistic decline, or it may be just a bump, given that Physicians of Vilnock was so good, one of her best. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Assassins of Thassalon. I will review it on the channel when I've got it and read it. I do recommend these, and I certainly recommend at least trying to find Penric's Demon as a ebook and reading that. If you've read them, tell me what you think in the comments. I'll see you next time.